Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's a Friday. It's Mick Walker. It's Spencer Holbrook. It's Lettermen Row. We don't really know how this show's going to go. Let's talk about Ohio State football on a Friday and just Ohio State in general on a Friday. You want to talk hoops? We can talk hoops. Buckeyes added North Carolina to the schedule, added Notre Dame to the schedule. They've already got Pitt on the schedule. The Ohio State conference slate is out, but the order and the times and dates aren't known yet. So, there's some stuff happening, but we're here to talk about football. You guys know that. Mick, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, yeah. If we want to keep expounding upon it, give it our little minute here. I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Men's lacrosse won their first Big Ten tournament game, so hats off to Nick Myers and the squad over there for getting one done. Karen Kumar and their softball team, I believe they're wrapping up their regular season series at Illinois this weekend, so finished on another high note, headed into the Big Ten tournament. Other than that, we're just big recruiting season, as Spencer talked about on the other show. Spencer is he's covering everything right now, basketball, team, everything he can find right now to cover because it's not the busiest time of the year. Me, on the other hand, we have a ton of recruiting stuff, still getting stuff out from Texas where I was last week. They don't have stuff from the Under Armour camp. They don't have stuff from Cincinnati where I was last week. Oh, and by the way, we're going to be on the road 4 days next week, so it's going to be a big old time.
Woo. Oh, my gosh. Look at you getting out and about on the road. For what it's worth, you didn't mention them. The baseball team does play Michigan this week. The baseball team is really bad, though. They're in the first year of a major rebuild. We don't need to talk about that. As somebody famous on CBS Sunday Morning said recently, we're not talking about that. So we'll just leave that there. All right, Mick, let's talk about it. You were down in Cincinnati yesterday on Thursday, full transparency. This is a Friday show, for a Cincinnati camp. Not the University of Cincinnati, but there were a camp in Cincinnati with a lot of youths at it who have aspirations of playing college football. How was that camp? Who did you see, and what were your impressions?
Yeah, 3 specifically that already have scholarship offers from Ohio State. Hit up about 4 or 5 schools. The first one was Cincinnati Anderson, and they did a 6 a.m. workout, which James Laurinaitis, Ohio State linebackers coach, was in attendance for. Lettermen Row was not in attendance for because of the family here at the Walker household. We're not waking things up at 3 a.m. to get down to Cincinnati, so we made the smart decision to delay it a little bit and stop at 10:30. Caught up with 4-star cornerback Ace Alston, 4-star linebacker Antoine Higgins. Both of them got offered within about a week of each other this spring on spring practice visits. Both of them are pretty high targets for Ohio State. Obviously, in the 27 class, any in-state guy that has an offer will be a top target. They'll both be at camp this summer individually as prospects to kind of work with James Laurinaitis and Tim Walton respectively. Then they'll both be at the 7-on-7 camp, so that should be a big day. Those guys, Ace is another guy similar to Albert Hill in the 26 class, a shorter cornerback prospect, but kind of fiery. Has some traits that you go, maybe a little Jermaine Matthews to him with the fiery, with the shorter stature. Antoine Higgins, he's another guy built in the CJ Hicks, Justin Hill kind of lab of hybrid defensive end linebacker spot. So it'll be interesting to see how Ohio State handles that. He's also high on places like Alabama and Notre Dame, so that one's going to be highly contested. 6'3", 210 pounds. He's everything you look for in a linebacker prospect, edge type of prospect. I think Higgins told me that James Laurinaitis compared him to Arvell Reese. So that was the first big stop. Other than that, the real notable one was going to Cincinnati's half to see Kyle Johnson or KJ Johnson, who Ohio State offered last week. Tyler Bowen stopped at the school, saw the 6'7" offensive tackle prospect workout, and he said, you know what? You don't even have to make the trip to camp this summer. I'll give you an offer now. He's still going to make the trip to camp this summer to work with Tyler Johnson, or Tyler Bowen, refine some technique, refine some different footwork stuff. But overall, he seems really high on Ohio State. His head coach is the son of the coach that works at St. Xavier, so they have a little tie to Paris Johnson Jr., who played his first 3 years of his high school career at St. Xavier. So Khalil's already kind of been in Paris Johnson, in touch with Paris Johnson Jr. Those are the 3 big guys in Cincinnati, and it's going to be, that area in general is going to be big for Ohio State in 2027 just because of those 3 guys. Jalen Mercer, I went and was, is another talented guy we saw who probably camps this summer and is going to be a guy that could be on offer watch as well.
Oh, sounds like a good trip down I-71. Who's the best player that you watched yesterday?
Since we didn't get to see Ace and Higgins work out, I'd probably say Kyle Johnson or KJ Johnson is the best way to refer to him. Saw him this past weekend at the Under Armour camp in Columbus at Pickerington North High School. He looked good there in some one-on-ones. Looked good again on Thursday, just kind of going through drills. And again, the bigger thing is this: they're going through drills. They were kind of doing one-on-ones, but not heavily. And you can't really do one-on-ones without any kind of pads or anything because it just turns into a lot of bull rush and speed moves. It's not the most productive thing to learn from. But talking with KJ afterwards, he is very insightful. You can easily tell that he's a culture fit at Ohio State, which sometimes, like with Cincinnati guys, Ohio State's kind of been hit or miss with in the past, but KJ is a perfect one-to-one fit. I think Ace and Antoine are right up there as well when it comes to just fit with the program and within the culture at Ohio State.
He is an 87 overall, I believe, an 89. The number 235 player, the number 20 offensive tackle, and the number 8 player in the state of Ohio for the class of 2027. That's not going to stick, right? Like that's definitely going to change, right?
Yeah, and he's going to go up. Like, obviously, he's an on 300 type of guy now, but Charles, like, they're taking that very diligently early on. You kind of keep guys in that 200 range a little bit lower, keep him in kind of that 3-star range, but he's an on 300 prospect. The bigger thing is, and it happens with guys that Ohio State recruits from the Columbus area sometimes when you recruit a city league guy, or even Glenville, because luckily Glenville and Ted Ginn Sr. schedule like national competition, top teams in the state, so you can see him stack up against the best. But overall, like, KJ is going to go against Cincinnati public school competition, which is not going to be he's not going against Moeller and St. Xavier like week in and week out. They'll have a couple of those games every year. They'll scrimmage those guys. I think they scrimmage Anderson, St. Xavier, and Taft all together. So Lettermen Row will probably be in attendance for that when that gets popping later this fall or earlier in the fall. But overall, that'll be the toughest thing holding him back. Like measurables, movement skills, like personality-wise, he checks all those boxes. But just competition, it's going to be hard to project. So that's why it was important for him to come to the Under Armour camp, face off against some guys that are 4-star guys. He'll have to come to more camps, come to Ohio State camps, and just kind of get those data points against high-level guys. But, yeah, he's got all the traits to be a top 200, top 150 type of kid.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good news because Ohio State, obviously, trying to turn over a new leaf in the offensive line recruiting, have struggled with top tackles outside of the state. In the state, they've been able to pretty much lock down what they want. You might get the best of both worlds here. Right? A top national tackle prospect who's also in the state of Ohio, a little bit of Carter Lowe in that recruitment, it kind of seems like. An Ohio guy who is an Ohio State fit, who's a top 300, but we're not really sure how elite he is at the high school level. Do you think that's like an apt comparison?
Yeah, Sam Greer is even a decent comparison just because Sam missed a lot of time in Hoban. Obviously, Hoban plays a much larger national schedule, so that's a little bit easier to project. But I think those two are similar. Like, they're both kind of quieter guys, but they fit the culture really well. They have all the traits in the world. You just kind of need to see some more against like top competition, because even though Sam plays against good competition, like Hoban wants to run the ball, so he's not getting 10 to 15 pass sets a game where he's able to really drop back against good competition and rush and pass protect. So all three of those guys, Carter, Sam, and KJ, are all kind of struggling with like the limitations of playing in Ohio and some of the limited competition. Like we'll talk about Texas or Georgia, any of these states, like you're going to throw a rock and hit a 4-star defensive lineman. That's just not as common in the state of Ohio. So those guys kind of have to work a little bit harder to show up to the camp and just kind of show themselves against that national competition.
Guys, Mick is throwing rocks at high school kids. Don't throw rocks at high school kids, Mick. And those of you out there, do not throw rocks at high school athletes. There you go. You can click that pen, make sure you're not throwing any rocks or anything really. No projectiles at high school athletes. But yeah, you're kind of right. If you're in Georgia or Florida, you can kind of throw a rock and hit a top 300 prospect. So, all right, let's get to the team side of things. We'll talk a little recruiting. Now we'll talk a little team. Ohio State still in pursuit of a defensive tackle in the transfer portal. I think that is over, personally. I would be kind of surprised if they add one at this point. I don't think there's one to be added, in all honesty. Everyone wanted to point at former Oklahoma State defensive tackle Justin Kirkland, who started a couple years for the Pokes, but I don't think was great. I'm not going to disparage the kid, but he was a good player, but not great. He entered the transfer portal. Everybody points at him. That's a guy Ohio State has to go get, can't miss, whatever. I did not hear that sentiment. I believe there was some tires kicked, and then there was some unkicking of the tires, or they stopped kicking those tires because Justin Kirkland lands at BYU, which, again, good program and good player, but there are SEC teams and Big Ten teams who have A, money, B, slots to fill, and C, needs at defensive tackle. And if they are not sliding in and grabbing, the top defensive tackles, you have to wonder, is that kid really an Ohio State caliber player, Big Ten or SEC caliber player? So based on what I see in the transfer portal at this point, and I'm not Ohio State, I'm not as smart as Mark Pantoni, I will never be when it comes to this kind of stuff. I don't see defensive tackles that will be immediate upgrades for Ohio State who are currently in the transfer portal. with that being said, I think the pursuit of defensive tackles in the transfer portal could be over, Mick. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's the case. Like you said, Mark Pantoni has a large staff. They evaluate these guys constantly, but they also, like, whether Kirkland has an agent or a coach or something, like a lot of these guys that enter the portal that could be fringe or could even be close. Like it just takes a cursory phone call to be like, hey, what's the market like? We're gonna do some evaluation. If we want to reach out, we will reach out later. And like obviously, I don't think it made it to the point where, hey, we're gonna reach out a second time or we're gonna stay in contact. And now he's signed and handed off to BYU. I think Ryan Day on Tuesday kind of like highlighted it all. He's like, we wanted to add a tackle. We wanted to add a tackle. We looked in the portal. There wasn't anybody that was. There weren't that many people that were going to be an upgrade, and some of them they might have missed out on. So now they were just kind of content, and that was when Kirkland was already in the portal. So I think that was kind of telling us without directly telling us that they weren't looking at any of those guys, including Kirkland, to kind of supplement this roster. Because overall, like the playing time is better spent giving it to like Jason Moore and just seeing if he can click, seeing if Jarquez Carter can burst on the scene as a freshman, than giving it to a guy that's like a fifth, sixth year guy that is just kind of already what he is as a run stuffer, like one technique, nose tackle type of guy.
Yeah, I just don't. The spring portal was kind of bad in general. Again, not disparaging the players who are in the spring, who went in during the spring portal, but overall, it just seemed like it was not what some were probably expecting. And so if there's not any guys out there that are upgrades or playing at the Ohio State caliber, just like Ryan Day said on Tuesday, you're not going to add just for the sake of adding. You're going to add if that player can help you win a national championship. I don't think there's anybody there that was going to help them win a national championship. So we'll see. We'll see if it goes any further. There's still a couple other positions that the Buckeyes have some coals in the fire. Like here, I've heard some things in the last week that are interesting. So we'll see where everything goes. I'm not ready to give anything out just yet. Maybe we will at some point next week. And we'll have to talk about, that. But, offensive line, they hosted a couple guys. They ended up elsewhere. They hosted one. He ends up at Ohio State, Justin Terry. Buckeyes host some defensive linemen. Nothing really comes to fruition. Buckeyes host a long snapper. They get a commitment from Grant Mills, who was at North Carolina. So they got Bo Atkinson. They got Grant Mills. They're basically building the Carolina up north here lately. Bo Atkinson, obviously going to help on the edge. Grant Mills, 4 years of eligibility remaining, is going to sit behind John Furlman, is expected to sit behind John Furlman this year and then become the Ohio State starting long snapper. Doesn't seem like an important position, but guess what? You probably don't know John Furlman's name because that's a good thing. Because every Indiana fan knew their long snapper's name when he launched one over the punter's head and flipped the Ohio State and Indiana game on its head. Like everyone at Maryland knew the long snapper's name in 2022 when he had a terrible snap and it set Ohio State up for an easy touchdown in a game that Ohio State was kind of on the brink in. So that it is what it is. Like, everybody knows the Michigan punter who was the whoa, he has trouble with the snap game because those are the kind of special teams plays that, Mason Arnold in the 2023 Michigan game, or 2022 Michigan game. Everybody remembers that because of he didn't snap it on the fake punt that was supposed to be. So, these are important things. But if you don't know John Furlman, that's a good thing. And so Morrow Evans enters the transfer portal. Grant Mills enters Ohio State from North Carolina. And now the Buckeyes can kind of develop him. Gunnar Daniel is the long snapping specialist. He was a former long snapper at Boston College. From what I heard, he was pretty excited to get Grant Mills in the fold. So John Furlman's going to be the starting long snapper. Not the sexiest thing to talk about, but Grant Mills joins the program. And then I've also been hearing continued good things about the Jackson Corville visit, the Ohio State target at kicker, who was at Ball State for a couple years, has played 2 years at Ball State, done a really good job. He enters the transfer portal. Ohio State hosted him on a visit last Thursday. It's been a week, but I continue to hear good things. The conversation is good, and I think the Buckeyes are in good position there. But that's about it. Like the transfer portal is slow. And I've heard from a good friend of the program, Pete Nakos, that the transfer portal is really slowing down. It's almost like it's in a school zone. We're going slow. And so it seems like it's done, Mick. And we'll see if there's anything else to add. Like I said, I've heard a couple of things, but we'll see. I don't think there's any reason to think that Ohio State's going to go out and land a top defensive tackle at this point because the portal's closed and there's no guys in there that are top defensive tackles.
Yeah, I think this is the second straight year where it's kind of showed in the spring portal window, like that's tampering time. I don't know if Ohio State really wants to be in the business of straight up tampering, but that's kind of the tamper. Like Miami does a great job. They land a lot of guys in the spring portal, and I don't think it's just because they're doing great evaluations of guys. There's a couple guys that enter, and within a couple days, they are finding their way to Coral Gables. Like I don't think that's by accident. There's a couple of places in SEC or even Colorado, like some of these schools that are having guys enter the portal, and then what do you know? A couple of days later, they're already on campus at the next play. Like this is tampering time in the spring portal window, and that's kind of just what the business is. Like in the winter, that's very much a situation where guys are like, hey, let's go find a new school. Let's get in here for spring practice. Let's figure out what like we can do at this next stop. In the spring, it's like, all right, I just went through spring practice. Can I make more money? Can I find a better opportunity? Or is somebody offering me a better opportunity? And I think that's kind of what's happened a lot in the spring. And like Spencer said, whole portal slowing down. Like we've talked about it on Lettermen Row, the Lettermen Lounge message board, $1 for your first 7 days. It's not just football. I think the wrestling program is hosting a transfer this week, but I think they're just about done. Women's basketball still, they added a transfer from Kylie Keats earlier this week, the Florida transfer that I'm pretty sure they're pretty excited about. It could play a big spot and kind of fill in for Cody McCann, who they lost to Old Miss. Other than that, I think they're looking for a backup center, but it's not real heavy in the portal. And then basketball transfer portal, it's just that is a whole event right now. I do think Darian Williams, the Texas Tech transfer, is a target, but that whole thing is just the whole reshuffling of the cards at this point, kind of waiting to see who's going to get money where and what kind of funds you have left to spend on who. Like overall, the portal is slowing down, which makes sense as we kind of enter into this off-season time where it's golf outings, fundraising events, camps. Like there's other things that college coaches have to turn their sights to other than just building the roster now. And you kind of see that with the portal.
Yeah, for what it's worth, like there was one guy in the spring, the two guys in the spring transfer portal that I thought would be good fits at Ohio State defensive tackle-wise. Murad Watson from Syracuse, he ends up at Texas. Okay, that was one Ohio State probably wanted, and it didn't work out. He's at Texas. And then the other one.
One visit, done. Like
one visit and done.
We can draw some conclusions there. I don't know if that's direct tampering because I think Ohio State would have called and like was interested, but Texas got their money up. Yeah,
for sure. And then the other one was Bernard Gooden from South Florida, who I think is a really good player. He entered the portal, set up a visit to LSU within the hour, visited LSU the next day, and then committed to LSU. So, like, there were the defensive linemen who truly entered the transfer portal looking for a new home. I don't think there was anybody Ohio State caliber in there. And so that's not me, vouching for Larry Johnson or making excuses for anybody. Like I am concerned about the Ohio State defensive tackle position. And there are important people at Ohio State who I know are also concerned about the defensive tackle position at Ohio State. But the bottom line is like, they're not just going to add to add. I think the Hoops program is in the same direction here. They're not going to add to add, even though they're not the defending national champs. They're not in the same position. Like they're not just going to add to add. So the portal's slowing down. We're slowing down. It's Friday. We're going to get out of here. That's Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like the video below. Subscribe to the Lettermen Row YouTube channel. You'll get notified every time we hit one of these. And then go over to lettermenrow.com. Become a member today. $1 for your first 7 days. We have a great time in the Lettermen Lounge message board with Mick and AG, Alex Gleitman covering the recruiting side, me on the team side. A lot of stuff going on over at On3, teaming up with rivals here in the future. We'll have a lot more on that in the future, and maybe even talk about it in a video so you guys are all made aware of what's going on. But for now, we're going to get out of here. Mick, Spencer, Lettermen Row, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week.